So it's my role to be the moderator for this, what seems to be a highly interesting afternoon. And I think the first speaker is probably the one that requires least introduction to this audience, since Dirk Helbing is the main coordinator of the FuturICT program. Dirk Helbing, as most of you know, has a background in physics, but moved into sociology a number of years ago. Is professor of sociology here at ETH. He's a member of the European Academy of Sociology. He's also a member of the German Academy called Leopoldina, he also leads the Physics of Socioeconomic System division of the German Physical Society. And he's a frequent contributor both to physics journals and social science journals, and most of his publications reflect the kind of many of the underlying themes of the FuturICT project. So please, Dirk.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm very pleased to introduce the FuturICT project to you, which will produce new science and technology to help us understand and manage our complex world in a more sustainable and resilient way. We're living in an information age, but the question is, what does it really mean? It means that we have created the most complex artifact ever. The global information communication system is composed of billions of components that are interacting. Computers, smartphones, factories, cars, maybe even your refrigerator. Many of those components learn to take autonomous decisions. They create a picture of the surrounding world. They make predictions into the future, and they're communicating with each other. These are more and more getting artificial social systems. Computer-based trading at financial markets is a good example. More than 50% of trades are done by computers. And what can happen is, for example, the flash crash. On May 6, there was a breakdown of the financial markets. For a few minutes, actually, solid stocks went down to penny stocks. And it turned out that was not a result of a criminal act. It was not a result of a fat finger. It was a result of the interactions within the trading system. So this shows that we are entering an age where there's too much complexity, too much data, too much speed, actually. Information and communication technology is part of the problem that we are facing today, but also key to the solution. We need to remember, of course, that the FED flagship initiative is in the area of information communication technologies, future and emerging technologies. So it's not a social science or humanities call. But we are pointing out that social science knowledge is needed to understand these systems. Otherwise, we'll have coordination problems, breakdowns of cooperation, conflict, crime, war in all those systems. In fact, we're talking about cyber wars just for a few months, and this shows that new problems are on the horizon. The biggest change is certainly through big data. Huge amounts of data are now becoming available through the internet, through sensor measurements. That's creating big opportunities for business, but also for science. One of the challenges, however, is how to turn data into knowledge. We are entering a situation of a data deluge, and it's very difficult to find really the useful bits of information in this huge sea of information. And data mining itself will not do the job. It requires model to turn data into knowledge. But big data also means big challenges, in fact. Cybercrime is exploding. There are privacy issues and also data security issues. For this very reason, we had 3 workshops on ethics alone within FuturICT's preparations. And will be an own research focus, and will invest millions into this research area. computers start to think for us. They're recommending us what we should do, what we should buy. They're giving returns to our Google search that is personalized. We're not seeing the same world anymore. Here's an example from Ellie Paris's book, The Filter Bubble. It shows that when two people ask for the same information, they'll get different outcomes. For example, Egypt over here. One of them gets travel information, the other one gets information about the political violent outbreaks. So there is a risk of manipulation and overconfidence. Supporting egocentric consensus may promote segregation and conflict between groups. And when you get out in the real world, you might be surprised when leaving your filter bubble that other people don't agree with you. All those questions may have fundamental societal implications. They need to be studied scientifically. And this is one of the justifications of FuturICT, but there are many more. So how did it all start? Well, actually, in 2008, there was a workshop by the OECD on applications of complexity science for policy. And that was at the verge of the financial crisis. At this time, I was pointing out, we've been investing so much into studying elementary particles in our universe. We've done big science projects to study the human genome, fusion, and all these kinds of things. But we don't understand enough about our society, how our financial system and our economy work. And that's why I was calling for a large-scale project about techno-socioeconomic systems. In the meantime, many people have repeated that. Many people think it's time for a big project to learn more about our society and the challenges we are facing. We've been working hard for 2 years already. I'm not earning anything on this. There is no research money at the moment. There is money for preparation. And we've made big progress, I should say. Now also, matching funds are becoming available. It's not a zero-sum game. There is extra money. And anyway, it will not be as expensive as one might think. We've been requesting 10 million Swiss francs per year from Switzerland for this. Most of this money will go into the education of PhDs and postdocs and to the training of needed experts. And it's a good investment. It costs just 20 cents per person per month. 10 times less than the cost of weather forecasts, and 100 times less than the cost of financial crisis or new fighter planes. So this is important to know, and I should also stress that we have followed the principle of openness. Everybody who was interested could interact with us, could support us, register as a supporter, and in the meantime, we have really received 1,000 supporters all over the world from many different disciplines. We have got the academic powerhouses in Europe on board, which means University College London and ETH Zurich, Cambridge, Oxford, Imperial College, London School of Economics, EPFL, INRIA, Fraunhofer, CNR, CNRS, and so on and so on. So all the premier academic institutions are on board, supercomputer centers. There are new positions already, new research centers, new journals. And business is interested in what we are doing. We have built a network of scientists all over Europe, and there's interest in Japan, in Singapore, in Australia, in the United States. We have integrated the different communities that are important for this project, which is social science and complexity science, and information and communication experts. The particular strength of this project is the focus on ethics, on education, societal benefits, and its economic potential. I'll go now more into the details of this project. So what is it about? We think networking is good altogether. It's promoting new services and new functions. We have now a global exchange of people, money, goods, information, and ideas. And that has changed the world fundamentally. The network that we have created, however, can also have their downsides. They can act as pathways for disaster spreading. And just to stimulate your imagination, I have a movie over here that shows you that a local perturbation in a system can mess up the whole system. I have table tennis balls over here, which are located on mouse traps. We'll drop one table tennis ball. As you can see, although this impact is local, the whole system is affected by it. Although this is a very oversimplified picture, it somehow captures some of the dynamics that we've seen at financial markets, for example. So this is a beautiful movie by Frank Schweizer's team, which shows the bankruptcy cascades that has happened in the United States. It looks a little bit like a thunderstorm in a summer's night, but it's much more devastating and costly. In the meantime, hundreds of banks have gone bankrupt as a result of cascading effects. But there are also cascading effects in political systems, as we've seen it in the Arab Spring, in the revolutions that are ongoing. We believe we need new science to fill knowledge gaps. For 30 years or so have we promoted globalization. We have pushed for technological revolutions. But for some reason, we didn't come up with a global system science to understand those systems. We need a science of systemic risks. We need to develop a practically relevant theory of complex systems. And then it in itself requires a lot of data. In fact, a new data science, which is not just counting bits and bytes, but also allows us to understand how information interacts and what distinguishes unimportant information from that information that is going to change our history. We need to have knowledge how to design systems in an integrated way. And we need to learn about the co-evolution of information communication technology with society. But it's not just that. Actually, we need to exercise a paradigm shift in our thinking, because the strongly coupled and complex systems that we have created behave in a fundamentally different way. Loosely coupled systems are characterized by the properties of the system components. Not so for strongly coupled systems. They tend to show a faster dynamics, an increased frequency of extreme events. In fact, they can have any size. They can have global impact. In our systems, self-organization is typical. It dominates the system dynamics. Those systems are hard to control from the outside, are hard to predict, and it's typical to find emergent behaviors. It means surprising new system behaviors that come up as a result of the interactions. It's quite typical to find unwanted feedback, cascade, or side effects. And our systems tend to be more vulnerable. Why do we need to change perspective? Because all these features can be understood on the basis of the interactions in the system, and usually not by the properties of the components. So we need to shift from a component-oriented view to an interaction-oriented view. That will reveal new solutions. It will create a new science, a multi-level complex system science. And to make it more clear to you, I'm showing you a few examples. So in traffic, stronger interactions means higher density. Now, in this situation over here, people are trying to maintain their speed. But despite best efforts, people will fail to do so. Everybody will stop his or her car as a result of the interactions. And it has just happened. You can see that a traffic jam has formed. It's propagating backward, and the system doesn't get rid of this anymore. There's actually a serious capacity drop due to this. It means just at the time when we need more capacity during rush hours, our streets are losing capacity as a result of interactions. The reason for this is systemic instability. And here is another example. Under normal conditions, at low densities, pedestrians are beautifully self-organizing. You can see that they're forming lanes of uniform walking direction. There's almost no obstruction because these different walking directions segregate, and so people can easily pass each other. All of this happens without people even recognizing this. It's like magic. Adam Smith's invisible hand at work. However, if the density goes up, then it can happen that coordination breaks down and that we end up with crowd disasters as we've recently seen it at the Love Parade in Duisburg. So what to do about it? Actually, as our systems are becoming more and more complex, we need a different approach. We need to have a decentralized management concept based on facilitating favorable self-organization. But this requires real-time data to allow us to flexibly adapt and respond. Here's an example. Under normal conditions, traffic can break down. We find these annoying stop-and-go waves many times, every week. And it's again a result of this instability of traffic flow. This is, by the way, our coffee meter. Martin Schreiber was very proud to come up with this measurement instrument for sudden changes in accelerator. Now, we want to understand how this stop-and-go flow comes about. And I turn my car into a helicopter. And it shows you that there are actually cars trying to enter the freeway. They create perturbations in the flow. This causes the stop-and-go waves. And now we're accelerating the playback, but the inflow of cars will be kept constant. What we'll now do is change the interactions of the cars. We activate the traffic assistance system, which works like cars are measuring distances and relative velocities and automatically respond to the vehicle in front in a slightly modified way. And you can see this allows us to get rid of the traffic congestion. So if interactions are the problem, we need to learn how to change them to support favorable self-organization. And the same thing can be applied to many other systems. In the same way, we managed to make Mecca and the pilgrimage over there much safer. Since then, no people have died anymore, while in the past, hundreds, in fact, thousands of people have died during these mass gatherings. Now, the question is, how can we scale this up? This is a promising approach, but we have global problems, and they need to be addressed in a joint global effort. And we want to create this collaboration between different fields and have succeeded quite a bit already, bringing together the humanities, qualitative sociology, quantitative sociology, economics, but also add new fields of sciences. Actually, complexity science exists already for some decades, but still can make fresh contributions. And computational social science, and data science, and crowdsourcing. We'll see that these fields basically will result in certain activities within the project, the Living Earth Simulator, Planetary Nervous System, Global Participatory Platform. Here I would like to stress that computational social science is not intending to replace qualitative sociology. It's a complementary activity, and I think we can all benefit from this interaction of the different fields, no matter how old they are. Bringing together the best knowledge will allow us to accelerate knowledge generation. We need to catch up with the pace of events and new problems. Science is not fast enough anymore, really, to create knowledge at the speed at which our world is changing. Now, FuturICT is not going to create a machine that predicts the future. Instead, we'll create instruments to explore the world. instruments are really important for discovery. And so, for example, we want to connect web experiment with data mining and modeling tools to reach an acceleration of knowledge generation, as in the Human Genome Project, for example. People are working on these platforms already. What is at the heart of FuturICT is to bring together data, models, and people in a beneficial way. So we'll create systems to sense and understand, that turn data into information. We'll develop models to simulate and predict as much as that is possible, and turn information into knowledge. And finally, build platforms to explore and interact, to turn knowledge into wisdom. And those different components of the system are called the planetary nervous system, the global participatory platform, and the living Earth simulator. And the number of issues that we need to address, for example, the planetary nervous system will generate big data sets about human activity and economic systems and so on, so we need to be careful about it. We won't just collect all the data that one can get. Instead, we'll do tailored measurements. We'll do a decentralized storage to make sure these data will not be misused. We'll aggregate on the fly, delete the sensitive data, and so on. So there are many different ways to ensure that the data will not be misused as much as this is possible. And also, we want to create responsible use of those platforms, which shall be open platforms for everybody. And in order to avoid misuse, we need transparency, accountability, self-regulation, which you may compare with the immune system, crowd intelligence, and we will use reputation systems for this. So, how to imagine these different components? The planetary nervous system, that will measure the state of the world in real time, as much as this is possible. These kind of projects are already done for environmental science, and now we want to transfer the same principle to techno-socioeconomic systems. And here is a nice example, actually, that shows you how you can use Flickr photos that are just out on the web in order to create a 3D environment of our world. So these are all the pictures that were taken about the Colosseum. See, it takes quite some hours, but after some time we have this beautiful 3D reconstruction without even having to go there. Same thing with OpenStreetMap and with other applications. We can take the world into your living room, basically. But it's not only about collecting data. Actually, we want to use this data to support collective awareness and a better understanding of the implications of our decisions and actions. We want to be able to measure the social footprint and social capital to protect it as we are protecting our environment. Of course, that requires data. How do we get them? Well, of course, the web is providing a lot of sources. Social media, digital news, sensor networks, and our mobile phones also have a lot of sensors in them. Of course, we cannot just measure everything with it. We need to be very careful about protection of privacy. We need to make sure people would provide the data themselves. They would have control over their data, and these data would be used in the way people want them to be used. So that requires to develop new algorithms and technologies. There is no ready-made solution for this, but it's a very important issue. The Living Earth simulator goes one step further. It's looking at what-if scenarios. It's creating models of certain parts of the world, of our society, of our economy, but we don't want to create a one-to-one representation. This example shows you that maps which simplify the environment as compared to a satellite picture help us to orient because they do simplify. And so simplification is an art that we need to learn. It helped a lot in the natural sciences, and I'd like to show you an experiment. So Can I have support for this experiment, please? So let's take these two bodies. The question is which one will arrive at the bottom first if I drop them at the same time? Who thinks this one will arrive first? Nobody, of course. Who thinks both of them will fall at the same speed? Nobody. Is there no physicists in the audience? Who thinks this is faster? Okay, and there's some people who didn't raise their hands. Let's do the experiment. So I'm asking a neutral person, independent, to do the experiment. Please drop both objects when I... Oops, that was fast. So the audience was right, wisdom of crowds. And now the issue is that there was this guy, wait a moment, Galileo Galilei, who claimed that these objects would fall at the same speed. How could he claim such bullshit? No. I mean, in social science, we know that every system is different. It looks different. But also here, the acceleration was different. How could he claim that these objects would fall at the same speed? Actually, there is another variant of the same experiment where we put this leaflet on top, and now we drop it again. As you can see, now they're falling in the same speed. Why is this? Because we abstracted from air resistance. Thank you very much. I think some applause is due. And that was really crucial for the development of physics. Before, there was an epicycle theory. Mathematically, it worked well. But there's a much simpler perspective since we shifted our view from a geocentric to a heliocentric worldview. And the question is, can we come up with simple models of social phenomena? And I'm quite hopeful, actually, that evolutionary game theory is a good basis for this. It can actually describe both the Homo economicus, but also promises explanations of fair and other regarding behavior as it's measured in many experiments. And actually, our most recent simulation models show that depending on certain parameter conditions, we would get a Homo economicus as a result or a Homo socialis. And that also means we should have two kinds of economic theories for the two different cases. Just to give you an illustration, I show you the surprising emergence of cooperation in a situation where everybody starts cheating each other. It's a hominis lupus situation where people are bad to each other in the beginning. Blue is cooperative. It appears only very rarely due to trial and error behavior. And we have here an imitation of best performing neighbors and combined with success-driven mobility and trial and error. You can see after a very long time, by coincidence, a local cooperative cluster emerges. And once it's there, cooperation is spreading all over the world. This cannot be understood if you just take two of the three mechanisms in separation. You need them all. And it's quite unexpected that we would find cooperation under these conditions. However, cooperation is really fundamental for society. We have a lot of cooperation problems: overfishing, global warming, misuse of social benefit system, tax evasion, free riding. But this is not all that we need to know. Society is based on social norms. It creates social order. And so we need to understand their emergence. We have developed a model that allows us to understand under which parameter conditions we would find a situation where one population with their preferences would set the norm, or the other one, or where everyone actually tends to do what he or she likes. We call this anomie. Or we could have a situation of local cultures. And currently, we are performing experiments in the lab which actually show that we see exactly those different kinds of behavior in reality. So we have predictive models now about social behavior. There are also new data about conflict. For example, in Jerusalem, the Middle Eastern conflict is really crucial to solve. We can find statistical patterns that can be put into an agent-based model, and this agent-based model allows us to test different political scenarios. For example, go on as before, or go back to the 67 scenario, or the Clinton parameters, or so. So now we need to put together all those different model components, and many still need to be created, actually. We need to integrate data and models. We need to scale them up, if possible, to global scale with all our partners in other continents and make them more accurate. And that will be done, first of all, on a smaller scale, where we're creating so-called observatories of financial systems, economic systems, and so on. And then through integration, we want to create these exploratories of economy, of society, of technology and environment. And taken together, that should give the FuturICT platform. So some of the observatories that we want to push forward is Future Cities Observatory and Financial and Economic Exploratory. Something like a wind tunnel for decision support that would help us to address really difficult questions. For example, how to deal with Greece, with the debt problem over there. What would be the impact of alternative scenarios on the euro and European Union itself? What is really the impact of high-frequency trading, of leverage, short selling, transaction costs? At the moment, we don't have the tools really to test it, but if we do a wrong decision, it will be very costly. It will cost many billions, actually. And probably we're doing mistakes all the time, so we need better tools. We also want to create an observatory for wars and conflict, an observatory for epidemic spreading and health risks, and more. And what is already indicated in the title, all this should not only be available for decision makers in politics and business, but it should be available for everybody. So the tricky thing is really how to open up data for everybody in a way that would not be misused. Because if we create a data commons, it's a public goods problem, right? There could be a misuse of the data, data pollution, manipulation, privacy intrusion, cybercrime, all this can happen. So if you want to provide the data to everybody, we need to learn how to do that. It's a difficult challenge. Certainly we want to open up the data that are currently in the hands of many companies, but not available to society, and also only in parts available to science. Society has a right to know about these data and what can be done with it, and it should benefit from these data. So, by creating these open platforms, that will facilitate new services and jobs, will lower the barriers for social, economic, and political participation. And here are just a few examples. So we'll create decision support platforms, and we want to create a platform for innovation. We actually think that learning about the principles according to which social systems work well or not will allow us to come up with social-inspired information and communication technologies, such as we had bio-inspired technologies before. So there's a lot to learn from social scientists about awareness, about social adaptiveness, about self-organization. There's so many interesting principles like cooperation, self-regulation, conflict resolution, resilience, trust, very interesting. Social norms, values, culture, and so on. So if we would understand it better, we could use it really to create systems that are beneficial to us. And in fact, there's a huge market coming up. So the social media landscape is exploding. There are many companies, and we think there will be actually an age of social-inspired innovation. Thank you very much.